The teacher laughed when Zayden walked to the board, called him ambitious for a black kid in an advanced math class. But 30 seconds later, every student went silent, as he solved an equation 2 grades above their level. The school didn't congratulate him. They accused him of cheating. Now he's suspended. His future's on the line. And a leaked video just exposed what the teacher said when she thought no one was listening. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. Zayden Miles adjusted the strap on his faded backpack, his thumb tracing the worn-out stitching, while his eyes scanned the wide hallway of Birkwood Middle School. The smell of disinfectant and fresh whiteboard paint clung to the air, but it couldn't cover the subtle tension that trailed him from the front office. Locker doors slammed like punctuation marks, and snippets of laughter, sharp, carefree, bounced from the polished tiles to the high ceilings. He stood out. That much was clear. Zayden's mother had pressed his shirt early that morning, triple-checked his lunchbox and whispered, "Show them what you know, not what they expect," before kissing his forehead. But the confidence she tried to breathe into him had already started to thin the moment he stepped into this predominantly white, upper-class school, a world away from the graffiti-tagged walls of Carver Middle School, where he used to be praised for his skills, not questioned. Room 212 Advanced Mathematics. Zayden exhaled and opened the door. The class fell briefly silent, not from awe but confusion. A few students turned mid-giggle. Their eyes scanned his clothes, jeans too short at the ankles, sneakers that had lost their grip. A girl with a shiny laptop case whispered behind her hand. A boy in a fresh varsity hoodie leaned over to his friend, smirking. At the front of the room stood Mrs. Karen Felton, a tightly wound woman in a fitted blazer with cold calculating eyes, and a tone polished by years of subtle condescension. She paused mid-lecture, whiteboard marker in hand, and looked Zayden up and down. "Can I help you?" she asked. Zayden straightened his back. "I'm in this class. Zayden Miles, transfer from Carver." Her eyes scanned the attendance sheet. The transfer. Her tone made it sound like she'd discovered a typo, not a student. "Well, take a seat. Anywhere near the back is fine." As Zayden moved past the rows of gleaming Chromebooks and perfectly aligned pencil cases, whispers floated behind him like smoke. He found an empty seat and sat without meeting anyone's eyes. Mrs. Felton turned back to the board, writing out a set of linear equations. "We're reviewing from last semester. Something simple to get back in gear," she said. "Let's see, who wants to solve this?" The class was quiet. Zayden raised his hand. Several heads turned in unison. Mrs. Felton's eyebrows shot up. "Yes, Zayden was it." He nodded. "All right, let's see what you've got." He walked to the front of the class. His heart pounded, not from fear of the math, but from the invisible weight in the room. He picked up the marker. The equation was basic. 3x, 2e11. He didn't even need to think. "First, subtract 2 from both sides," he said softly, writing it down. "Then divide by 3. So, x, c, 3. There was a long pause. Mrs. Felton chuckled. Not kindly, not encouragingly. "Oh dear," she said, addressing the class. "We're not reviewing multiplication tables here. This is algebra, not math camp." The class erupted in stifled laughter. Zayden blinked. He stared at the board. But that's the right answer," he said, barely audible. "Sure, sweetie, but that's not the point of the exercise," she replied, stepping past him to rewrite the equation. "We're trying to test conceptual thinking. Maybe hold off on volunteering for now. All right?" He turned to return to his seat. His ears burned. A boy whispered, "Multiplication tables," and someone snickered. He sat back down, clutching his backpack under the desk. The numbers were right. He knew they were. But somehow here, right wasn't enough. Mrs. Felton continued her lesson, but Zayden didn't hear a word. His mind replayed her voice again and again. "Sweetie, multiplication, math camp." 10 minutes later, she assigned a more complex equation to the class and told them to solve it at their desks. "This one's from last year's test. Let's see who remembers anything after summer," she said. Zayden looked at the board. 2x3. He solved it in seconds, but something about her tone, her smirk, and the class's laughter haunted him. So, instead of solving it quietly, he stood again, walked to the front, picked up the eraser, and before Mrs. Felton could protest, he wiped the board clean. A few students gasped. He picked up the marker and rewrote the same equation, but did something different. Instead of solving it the standard way, he rearranged it to demonstrate multiple solution paths, isolating variables, factoring, even a graphical interpretation. The board was now covered in organized logic, each method neatly labeled, steps justified, and ending in the same answer. The class was silent. He capped the marker, turned around. Mrs. Felton stared at the board, blinking, her mouth slightly open. A girl near the front whispered, "Wait, what?" Zayden sat back down, eyes fixed on the floor. The silence held for just a second longer than it should have. Then Mrs. Felton cleared her throat. "Well, that was creative. But let's stick to the methods taught in class. Please." Zayden didn't respond. He didn't need to. He wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. He just wanted to be seen for what he actually was. The bell rang moments later. Students filed out. Mrs. Felton remained by the board, staring at the unexpected layers of logic sprawled across it. She didn't erase it, not yet. She just stood there, silently trying to understand how a boy she had just dismissed rewrote her lesson, in ways she didn't fully grasp. Zayden erases the board, and rewrites the equation with a shocking twist that no one understands yet. The echo of laughter from Mrs. Felton's classroom still clung to Zayden's thoughts long after the final bell rang. He walked home with his head lowered, kicking at stray pebbles along the curb. The upscale streets of Birkwood looked nothing like the cracked sidewalks of Norfolk, where the hum of life had been louder, grittier, more familiar. There the smell of fried food mixed with gasoline. Here it was cut grass and silent. Everything about this new world felt polished, and he wasn't sure he fit anywhere in its shine. When Zayden reached home, his mother, Nia Miles, was already slipping into her scrubs. She worked the night shift at the local hospital. 12 hours of endless motion. Her tired smile greeted him like a lamp in a dark hallway. "How was your first day, baby?" she asked, tightening her ponytail in the hallway mirror. Zayden hesitated. He wanted to tell her the truth, that the teacher laughed, that the students whispered, but he couldn't. She'd fought too hard for this transfer. He forced a shrug. "It was okay, just different. Different's good sometimes," she said, reaching for her keys. "You don't gotta blend in, just focus. People see what they want to see. You just show them what they can't ignore." She kissed his cheek, and within minutes the front door closed behind her. The apartment fell silent, except for the distant hum of traffic and the ticking of the cheap kitchen clock. Zayden unpacked his backpack. Between bent notebooks and broken pencils, his most prized possession waited. A small worn spiral filled with equations, scribbles and theories he barely had words for. He flipped to a page titled Pattern Rhythms. The writing was uneven, half doodles, half. He stared at a grid of numbers, and suddenly the world began to make sense again. Each digit, each symbol, connected to another in ways most people never notice. He thought back to his old neighborhood, Carver Projects, where math had been a joke to most. His brother Tariq used to call numbers the streets that don't lie. Tariq was older by 6 years, now serving time at Greensville Correctional for a robbery gone wrong. But before the bars and concrete walls, he had tried to steer Zayden away from the same path. Zayden remembered the summer nights when Tariq would sit with him on the porch, a dim light flickering above them. He'd pull out crumpled worksheets from a prison re-entry math packet. "Yo, lil man," Tariq would say, tapping his pencil on a faded equation. "You see this right here? Don't look at it like numbers. Look at it like beats, like music. Math got rhythm if you listen." Zayden didn't understand at first, but as he watched his brother turn fractions into something alive, something almost poetic, it clicked. Numbers weren't rules, they were possibilities. They didn't judge, didn't care about color or clothes, or zip code. He'd spent every free moment, after that, exploring patterns in anything he could find. The arrangement of broken tiles on their kitchen floor, the timing of sirens outside, the flicker of the TV when the cable glitched. Math was everywhere, and it whispered to him like a secret language no one else bothered to learn. Back then, Carver teachers praised his curiosity, but rarely believed his depth. "You're good at memorizing, huh?" they'd say, as if it were impossible he actually understood. When he tried explaining his own methods, they'd smile politely and redirect the class. Even the after-school tutor once told his mom, "He's bright, but sometimes these kids get ahead of themselves." Nia would nod politely but clench her jaw until her molars hurt. She'd seen enough of what these kids meant. Now in Birkwood, history seemed to repeat. Only this time, the disbelief came dressed in better grammar and softer tones. Zayden spent the next few nights poring over equations, trying to find comfort in something certain. But one afternoon changed everything. He was walking down the hall before second period when he noticed a small crowd near the bulletin board outside the math department. Students were gathered, whispering, their faces a mix of confusion and amusement. "Yo, who did this?" one boy asked, pointing at a sheet pinned to the board. Zayden steps slowed. On the board, printed neatly and enlarged, was his equation, the one he had rewritten on Mrs. Felton's whiteboard. The same one she hadn't erased. The same one no one had understood. Except now, it was labeled Accidental Genius, Advanced Equation Solved by 8th Grader. The handwriting under the title wasn't Mrs. Felton's. It looked like something from the administration office. The whole layout felt official, too official. The board framed it like an accomplishment. Zayden felt his heart race. For the first time since he transferred, people were noticing him. But the feeling soured almost instantly. As he stepped closer, he saw something that made his stomach drop. His name, typed neatly at the bottom corner, had been crossed out in thick black marker. Someone had written in new letters beside it. Probably copied it. A wave of laughter rippled through the hallway. Someone whispered, "Yeah, right. Ain't no way he did that." Another voice added, "Mrs. Felton must have helped him." He froze. His throat tightened. It wasn't the first time someone questioned what he was capable of. But this cut deeper. Here was proof of what he could do, twisted into proof of what he couldn't. He turned to leave, but a voice stopped him. "Hey, Miles," Mrs. Felton called from behind. She stood by the doorway, coffee mug in hand, eyes scanning the bulletin board. Her expression was unreadable. "Quite the display, huh?" she said, sipping casually. Zayden waited, hoping she'd say something, anything to defend him. Instead, she tilted her head. "You might want to be careful about putting work like that up," she said, her voice even. "Sometimes people misunderstand intentions." He frowned. "I didn't put it up." Her eyes flickered. "Of course. Still, maybe don't draw unnecessary attention to yourself. Focus on your studies instead of showmanship." Zayden's stomach churned. He wanted to ask her why she didn't correct anyone, why she didn't stand up for him. But she was already walking away, blending into a sea of students who looked nothing like him. That night, he lay awake in bed. The sheet from the bulletin board burned in his memory. He wondered who had crossed out his name, and why Mrs. Felton had said nothing. The next morning, he passed by the board again. The paper was still there, but something new caught his eye. A sticky note attached to the corner read, "Genius, or fraud." He tore it down and crumpled it in his fist. Somewhere deep inside, something shifted. He wasn't gonna let them define him by their disbelief. He went home that evening, pulled out his old notebooks from Norfolk, and began working on something far more complex than before. If they wanted proof, he'd give them something undeniable. As he scribbled late into the night, his numbers started to form something new, something beautiful. Patterns collided and merged, equations spiraling like galaxies on paper. His world became numbers, his escape, his rebellion, his language of truth. By morning, exhaustion had set in, but he didn't care. His work was finished, pages upon pages of what felt like revelation. But when he arrived at school the next day, the bulletin board was gone, empty, clean, like it had never been there. And on the floor beneath it, half crumpled and stepped on, lay the same sheet that once carried his equation, his erased name, now torn through the middle. Zayden's rewritten equation gets posted on a school bulletin board and labeled Accidental Genius. But someone crosses out his name. The next morning, the hallways at Brookwood buzzed with whispers that seemed to follow Zayden wherever he went. The bulletin board incident had spread faster than he imagined. Every time he turned a corner, he felt eyes on him, half curious, half mocking. A few students smirked when he passed, whispering Accidental Genius under their breath, like it was a joke. When he entered Mrs. Felton's classroom, the whiteboard was already spotless, as though nothing unusual had ever been written there. The smell of dry erase markers filled the air. His heart thudded as he took his usual seat, near the back. Mrs. Felton stood at the front, reviewing the day's lesson on linear graphs, her tone brisk and efficient. She didn't look at him once. After class, Zayden lingered as the others filed out. His palms were damp. When the room finally emptied, he approached her desk. "Mrs. Felton," he began, his voice steady but soft. "I wanted to ask about the bulletin board." She looked up from her laptop, pretending not to understand. "What about it?" "The paper with my equation," he said. "My name was crossed out." "Who put that up?" She sighed. setting her pen down with deliberate calm. Zayden, it was probably just a student prank. Kids can be thoughtless sometimes. I wouldn't take it personally. But someone copied it next to my name. Her expression tightened just slightly. I know, I took it down as soon as I saw it. But it's over now. Best not to dwell on it. Zayden's throat tightened. It wasn't a prank, he said. He hesitated, searching for the word. Targeted. Mrs. Felton leaned back in her chair, her tone turning cool. Zayden, let's not make this into something it's not. He blinked. Something like what? She hesitated, then smiled. A small, practiced curve of her lips. You know, a race issue. This is a good school. We don't tolerate discrimination here. I think you might just be feeling sensitive. Her words dropped like stones. Zayden stood there, numb. Sensitive. That word echoed through him, twisting with quiet anger. He opened his mouth to argue but stopped. There was no point. He nodded slowly and left the room. As he walked down the hall, he caught sight of the bulletin board again. Empty, freshly wiped clean. It looked sterile, indifferent, like his name had never been there at all. Later that afternoon, he was called to the principal's office. Principal Robert Carlyle was a man who prided himself on calm authority. His office smelled of polished wood and coffee. Behind him, plaques and framed certificates gleamed in the fluorescent light. Zayden, he greeted with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Have a seat. Zayden sat quietly, backpack still slung over his shoulder. Mr. Carlyle folded his hand. I heard there was some confusion over a math problem posted on the board. Zayden nodded. Yes, sir. My equation. Someone crossed out my name and said I cheated. Mr. Carlyle tilted his head, frowning slightly. Do you have any idea who might have done it? No. Well, I'll certainly have the staff keep an eye out, he said in that careful, diplomatic tone adults use when they don't plan to do anything. But sometimes students can get competitive, especially when a new face comes in and draws attention. Zayden looked down. I didn't try to draw attention. I know, son, but this is a new environment. Different culture. Maybe it would help if you focused on fitting in first before trying to stand out. Zayden looked up, confused. Sir, I didn't do anything wrong. Of course not, Miss Carlyle replied quickly. No one's saying you did. I'm just suggesting you let things settle. Keep your head down a bit. That's all. Zayden swallowed hard. The principal's tone was calm, kind even, but it felt like a wall, a polite dismissal dressed as advice. When Zayden got home that evening, his mother was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her hospital scrubs, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She'd already heard. The email from the school had arrived earlier. A minor misunderstanding involving Zayden and a class project. All handled. She looked up as he entered. What misunderstanding? Zayden hesitated. They said it was a prank. Who? The teacher. The principal too. Mia's voice sharpened. Did they find who did it? He shook his head. She leaned back, crossing her arms. I knew it, she murmured. I told myself this place would be different. Better. But it's the same thing dressed in a uniform. Zayden dropped his backpack onto the floor. Mom, it's fine. I don't want to make it worse. Worse? She repeated. Baby, they're trying to erase your work, your name. That's already worse. He didn't answer. He just sank into a chair, staring at the chipped edge of the kitchen table. She reached across, placing a hand over his. Listen to me, Zayden. You don't let them tell you what you're worth. You hear me? He nodded silently. But later that week, things got worse. During algebra class, Mrs. Felton handed out a worksheet filled with complex word problems. This should test your logical reasoning, she said. When Zayden finished early, she frowned, reviewing his paper. Already? That was fast. I like this stuff, he said quietly. Her eyes scanned his work. Every answer was correct. Her lips tightened. Zayden, where did you learn to simplify like this? He hesitated. Nowhere. I just figured it out. She nodded slowly. Interesting. You seem ahead for your age. Her tone wasn't complimentary. It was probing. That evening, Zayden was called back to the office again. This time, a guidance counselor joined the meeting. They asked about his study habits, what websites he used, whether he had any private tutors. Each question felt heavier than the last. Finally, the counselor smiled politely. Zayden, we're just trying to understand your methods. Some of your work looks advanced. College level even. We just want to make sure you're not getting outside help in a way that's unfair. He felt his stomach twist. I'm not cheating. Of course not, she said quickly. No one's accusing you. We're just verifying. When Zayden left the room, his hands trembled. He wasn't sure what hurt more, the doubt or the politeness that wrapped around it like silk. By the time detention rolled around that Friday, for a missed homework submission he never actually missed, Zayden was drained. Mrs. Felton supervised the room, sitting at her desk with a cup of tea. Zayden took out a blank sheet of paper and began scribbling. Numbers were the only place he still felt safe. He started solving a problem he'd seen once in a video about college-level calculus. Something about rate of change within a nested function. He didn't know why it stuck with him, but it made sense in a way language never did. His pencil moved fast, the numbers flowing like rhythm and rhyme. Minutes passed. He lost track of time, of sound, of everything but the logic unfolding beneath his fingertips. Across the hall, the janitor, an older black man named Mr. Howard, had stopped his mop to watch. Through the glass window of the detention room, he saw the boy's hand move, his brow furrowed in focus, the white page filling with elegant lines of reasoning. The math didn't just look correct, it looked beautiful. Mr. Howard fished his phone from his pocket. He hesitated, then quietly pressed record. Through the glass he captured what the school refused to see, a 13-year-old black boy solving problems high schoolers couldn't touch, alone, under fluorescent lights, while the teacher who doubted him sipped her tea in silence. Zayden solves a calculus-level problem during detention, and the janitor silently records it. The hum of fluorescent lights echoed softly in the empty hallway, as Mr. Howard watched his phone screen in silence. The janitor's face, weathered by years of waxed floors and unseen labor, barely changed as the video played again. The camera was shaky but focused. Zayden's fingers flew across the page, equations blooming like brushstrokes. There was no hesitation, just rhythm, intuition, mastery. He didn't look up once. Mr. Howard uploaded the clip to TikTok that night. No hashtags, no caption, just a quiet title. This boy's mind is not normal. He didn't expect anything to happen. It was more instinct than plan, like tossing a message in a bottle and letting the tide carry it. But within hours, the tide became a wave. By morning, the video had 230,000 views. By noon, 980,000. The comments exploded. Aid Math Nerd 55. This is AP Calc BC level. Who is this? I Black Girl Genius. Give him a scholarship now. I Tech Futures. This kid might be the next Elon. MIT needs to find him. I'd Unreal Genius. Hands of a legend. Face of. Everyone was asking the same thing. Who is the black kid solving college math in detention? But no one had an answer. The camera never showed his face, only his hands, brown and steady, guiding the pencil with a dancer's grace. No school name, no background noise, no hint of identity, just brilliance in motion. Zayden didn't know any of this. When he arrived at school the next day, nothing had changed for him. The hallways still ignored him. The bulletin board remained blank. Mrs. Felton glanced his way with her usual tight-lipped indifference. He took his seat quietly, as if the entire world hadn't just begun to orbit a version of him it couldn't recognize. Midway through third period, something shifted. A murmur began in the front row. A student showed her phone to her deskmate. Then another. Someone whispered, "That's from here, right?" Another chimed in, "My cousin saw it on Instagram last night." Zayden caught a glimpse of the screen. A video blurry, tilted, grainy, but unmistakably his hands. He froze. Before he could process it, Mrs. Felton walked in, holding her own phone. She looked almost amused. "All right, everyone," she said, placing her phone on the desk. "Let's get started. But first, anyone see that little viral math video going around?" Heads nodded. Voices buzzed. "Yes. So crazy. Dude's a genius." Mrs. Felton smirked. "Someone sent it to me this morning. Incredible stuff. Some unknown student doing what looks like second-year college math. And in detention, no less." She clicked the screen to project it behind her. The classroom lights dimmed. Zayden's stomach dropped. There it was. His proof. His hand. The page he'd spent over an hour crafting under cold white lights while she sipped tea 2 feet away. Mrs. Felton chuckled. "Now let's all be honest. Imagine if he were one of you." She gestured toward the class with a laugh. The students laughed too, even the ones who had no idea what they were laughing at. It was permission, and Zayden felt it land on him like dust on glass, coating him invisibly, smothering his light. He didn't speak. He didn't raise his hand. He sat perfectly still, afraid that if he moved, someone might recognize him. Or worse, deny it was him. That night, Zayden sat at the kitchen table while his mother scrolled her phone during dinner. She rarely had time to check social media, but something had caught her eye. "Zayden," she said slowly, her voice hesitant. You weren't solving math in detention last week, were you?" He looked up, chewing slowly. "Why?" She turned the phone toward him. The video played. He sighed. "That's me." She stared. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't think it mattered," he said. "No one knows it's me anyway." Mia's mouth tightened. "That's the problem. They want your work, your genius, but not your name." Zayden didn't reply. He didn't need to. It was the truth, clean and brutal. Elsewhere, the world moved fast. A math professor at Howard University shared the video with the caption, "If this student doesn't have a scholarship in 72 hours, we've failed." A tech influencer on YouTube did a breakdown of the handwriting and logic. "Whoever this is," he said to 1.2 million followers, "is not a fluke. This is rare cognitive processing. Pattern intuition. We need to find him." Still, no one knew the face. The world applauded the talent and erased the boy. Until one viewer paused the video, zoomed in, replayed it again. Dr. Celeste Morgan, director of the Mid-Atlantic Gifted Youth Program, sat in her home office late at night, watching the video with a furrowed brow. Something about the handwriting looked familiar. She clicked replay, then paused. A memory stirred, 3 years ago, during an outreach initiative at a rec center in Norfolk. A tiny wiry boy sat cross-legged on the floor, watching her solve number puzzles meant for 10th graders. He hadn't spoken much, but when he did, he corrected her with startling precision. He had solved one of her exercises before she finished writing it. She had written his name down. Zayden Miles. She opened her old files, searched her emails, and there it was, a scanned worksheet, messy handwriting, brilliant logic, the same hand, the same brain. She sat back in her chair, stunned. It was him. Without hesitation, she composed an email to her admissions committee. Subject line, "Urgent identity of viral math student confirmed." She attached both the video and Zayden's old file. Her message was simple. "We need to contact this student immediately." The next morning, a sleek black car pulled into the Birkwood parking lot. A sharply dressed woman stepped out, holding a manila folder with Zayden's name on it. She didn't go to the front desk. She went straight to Principal Carlisle's office. Inside, Carlisle blinked at the credentials in front of him. "Gifted program?" he asked. Dr. Morgan nodded. "Zayden Miles is exceptionally gifted. I've reviewed his work before. He belongs in a space that can actually support him." Carlisle leaned back. "Well, I'm not sure he's the best fit here academically or socially. He's been having some difficulty adjusting." Dr. Morgan's expression didn't flinch. "Your environment is the problem, not the student." She closed the folder. "We'll be offering him a place in our program. Full ride. Transportation covered. If he accepts, he won't need to return here." Outside, Zayden walked the halls, unaware of the conversation unfolding behind closed doors. But at lunch, his name rippled in whispers again. Someone said that math kid might go viral again. "I heard colleges are looking for him now." Wait, what if it really was that new kid? Zayden tried to ignore it. He hunched over his tray, chewing quietly, his head down, and then his phone buzzed. An email notification. Subject: Urgent. Gifted Youth Program Opportunity. Immediate action required. His breath caught. He opened it and saw the name he hadn't heard in years. Dr. Celeste Morgan, a gifted program recruiter, sees the clip and recognizes Zayden from an old tutoring session years ago. Zayden stared at the email for a long time, its sharp black text glowing back at him like a challenge, and a lifeline all at once. It was official. The Mid-Atlantic State Math League had accepted his nomination to compete, and under Birkwood Middle School's name. He hadn't applied. He hadn't even known the school was planning to submit anyone new. It took another minute before he noticed the CC'd sender at the bottom. Dr. Celeste Morgan, the woman who remembered him, who believed in him. Still, the word that bothered him wasn't accepted. It was under his name, his mind. His proof had traveled through the internet to reach gifted program leaders and professors. Yet somehow Birkwood, the very place that doubted him, would now own the glory of his performance. He clicked back to the rest of the thread. At the bottom was a note from Principal Carlisle. "We are thrilled to support one of our brightest students. Thank you for this opportunity. brightest. Zayden leaned back in his chair. The same man who told him to keep his head down was now staking the school's reputation on him. The next day he was called into Mrs. Felton's classroom during lunch. She wasn't alone. Principal Carlyle stood near the windows, arms folded, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Felton gestured to a chair. "Zayden, have a seat." He sat cautiously. Carlyle stepped forward. "You've been invited to represent Berkwood at the Math League Regionals." Zayden nodded slowly. Mrs. Felton added, "It's a surprise to us. We typically select students from our gifted pipeline, students we've observed over years." Zayden glanced at her. "I didn't ask to be chosen." Mrs. Felton smiled without warmth. "No, you didn't, which is part of the challenge here. This is a team competition. You'll be joining 3 others who've been training since last fall. Integrating you so late may well disrupt the dynamic." Carlyle cleared his throat. Still, Dr. Morgan's endorsement was strong. "So we're allowing it." "On a trial basis," Mrs. Felton added. Zayden heard the undertone. He wasn't being invited. He was being tolerated. Outside that room, whispers spread fast. "Zayden's on the math team? Seriously? Just 'cause of some TikTok? I heard he just memorizes stuff." That line hit harder than most. "He's just good at memorizing." It wasn't the first time Zayden had heard it. It had chased him through classrooms his whole life, a sneaky way to say, he's not really smart. He just remembers things, as if his mind wasn't creating, only copying. Team practices began that week. 3 teammates, Ava, the tall girl who always wore designer headbands, Max, who had a laptop covered in tech stickers, and Jordan, the soft-spoken one who did most of the work. None of them looked at Zayden during the first meeting. The coach, Mr. Bradley, ran through practice sets. Zayden stayed quiet at first, observing, but by the second problem he couldn't stay silent. "Wait," he said, pointing at the whiteboard. "You don't need to graph that. You can cancel the variables if you substitute here." He scribbled quickly, rewriting the solution. It shaved 5 steps off the method. Mr. Bradley raised an eyebrow. "That's correct. Interesting," Ava muttered. "If you say so." Max whispered something to Jordan. They both chuckled. Later that night, Zayden checked his phone. The team group chat had gone quiet. Then he realized he'd been removed. He texted Jordan separately. "Zayden, hey, was I kicked out of the team chat?" Jordan, "Sorry, Ava. Made a new one. Said it was less distracting. Nothing personal." Zayden didn't reply. The next day at lunch, he sat alone again. Not that it was new, but now the silence carried a sharper edge. By Friday, Zayden stopped going to the official team meetings. He didn't say anything. He just started going to the local library every afternoon, and sometimes stayed until closing. It was the only place he didn't have to explain himself. He found a corner booth, near the window, next to the radiator. Warm, quiet, empty. He laid out old practice tests, and began crafting solutions from scratch. When a librarian noticed, she brought him more books, college-level math problems, logic games, theoretical proofs. "You might like these," she said with a smile. Zayden whispered, "Thank you." He studied like a ghost. Hours passed unnoticed. He didn't need a chat group. He didn't need team dynamics. He had equations, and they never looked at him funny. Finally, competition day arrived. Berkwood's team wore matching hoodies with the school's crest on the back. Zayden didn't get one. No one offered. They stood together in a line. He stood apart. Before they entered the competition hall, Mrs. Felton pulled him aside. "Zayden," she said quietly, "I expect you to keep things modest today. This is about the school, not personal glory." He stared at her. "Yes, ma'am." He took his place at the table. The first few rounds were team events. Zayden answered only when asked, offering clear, precise logic. His answers were faster than the timer could track. But his teammates rarely looked at him. They nodded among themselves, barely acknowledging his input. But when the individual rounds started, everything changed. Zayden was given a set of 10 problems, ranging from standard algebra to pre-cal to one final proof, labeled bonus, not expected to be solved. He solved it. Every problem. He checked his work twice. The judges double-checked it. By the time the final scores were read, whispers echoed across the auditorium. "Whose number? Did you see that final proof? That kid solved it in 10 minutes. Mrs. Felton stood frozen. The announcer walked to the podium. In first place, with a near-perfect individual score, representing Berkwood Middle, Zayden Miles. A wave of silence. Zayden stepped forward. Half the crowd clapped, the rest stared. He felt a lump in his throat. Not from nerves, but from the weight of the moment. He'd earned this. Without shortcuts. Without anyone helping. And yet he could already feel the backlash brewing in the room. He returned to his seat. Mrs. Felton didn't look at him. Neither did Ava or Max. After the ceremony, as the teams exited the hall, Zayden was approached by one of the judges. A thin man with glasses and an unreadable expression. "Excuse me, young man," the judge said. "Can we have a quick word?" Zayden followed him to a side office. Two more officials waited inside. One held a manila folder. "Zayden, your score today was unusually high," the woman said gently. He blinked. "I just solved the problems." The man with the folder frowned. "We're reviewing the footage. It's just protocol. Some of the methods you used, well, they resemble work from academic journals." Zayden's heart dropped. I didn't cheat. "We're not saying that yet." They exchanged glances. "We'll need to review everything. Your scratch papers, your methodology. For now, your results are under investigation." Zayden stood there, stunned. The room blurred around the edges. After all that, again the same word. Not congratulations. Just maybe it's too good to be real. At the competition, Zayden's score leaves everyone stunned. But he's accused of cheating. The day after the state math league competition, the school hallways felt unnaturally still. Zayden expected congratulations, a handshake, maybe even a quiet good job from someone, anyone. But when he walked through Birkwood's front doors, heads turned away, conversations hushed. His win wasn't being celebrated, it was being whispered about. In the office, a gold trophy sat on the counter beside the receptionist's keyboard. Its small engraved plate read, "Birkwood Middle, first place, individual category." Zayden's name wasn't on it. "Zayden Miles to the principal's office, please," came the announcement, over the loudspeaker, slicing through the air like a blade. He froze mid-step. A few students glanced over. One of them, Ava, muttered just loud enough for others to hear. "Guess they found out." He walked down the long hallway, the soles of his shoes squeaking against the polished tile. Every echo carrying the same weight. Again, when he reached Principal Carlyle's office, the door was already open. Mrs. Felton sat inside with her arms folded, lips tight, expression unreadable. Next to her was a man Zayden didn't recognize, bald, middle-aged, wearing a tie with the Math League logo embroidered on it. Carlyle gestured to a chair. "Zayden, come in." Zayden sat. The silence that followed was long enough to hear the faint ticking of the wall clock. Finally, Carlyle cleared his throat. "We've had some questions raised about the competition results." Zayden's stomach tightened. "Questions?" The man from the Math League opened a folder. "Your solutions were unusually advanced. Some of your methods resembled work from university-level algorithms. Methods not taught at this level." "I just solved the problems," Zayden said quietly. Mrs. Felton spoke up then, her voice measured but sharp. "No one's accusing you of anything, Zayden. We're just curious where you might have learned such techniques." "I didn't learn them," he said. "I figured them out." The man raised his eyebrows. "On your own?" Zayden nodded. "Without tutoring? Or online help?" "I study online sometimes," Zayden admitted. "Math videos, forums, books." Carlyle leaned forward. "Can you show us some of those sources? We'd just like to verify what you've been using." Zayden hesitated. "I don't remember all the links." Mrs. Felton sighed softly, as if disappointed. "You see, that's the problem. We can't trace where you got this knowledge." "I didn't get it," Zayden said, voice breaking slightly. "I thought it." That should have been enough. It was the truth. But the adults in front of him exchanged glances, the kind that said more than words ever could. Carlyle leaned back. "No one doubts your intelligence, Zayden. But the League has a strict policy. They'll be reviewing your answers and scratch work. Until then, we'll be holding off on public recognition." Zayden blinked. "So I can't keep the award?" Carlyle's tone softened, but it felt rehearsed. "Let's just say it's on hold for now." He didn't remember leaving the room, only the cold hollowness that followed him into the hallway. He passed the trophy again on the front counter. It gleamed under the fluorescent lights, cold, impersonal, nameless. A victory with no owner. By afternoon, the whispers grew louder. "He got caught." "Yeah, no way he did all that himself. I heard he had help from some college student online." Zayden sat through class in silence. When the bell rang, Mrs. Felton asked him to stay behind. She closed the door. You need to understand something, Zayden, she said, in that slow, condescending tone she used when she wanted to sound kind but not too kind. People are skeptical because your work doesn't align with what you've been taught here. I'm not everyone else, Zayden said. Mrs. Felton frowned. It's not about that. It's about consistency. If your ability is real, you should be able to reproduce it under supervision. He met her eyes. You think I cheated? I think you should take this as an opportunity to prove yourself, she said carefully. We're arranging for a review. You'll solve new problems in front of the math department. That way everyone can feel confident in your abilities. Zayden's chest tightened. You mean so you can make sure I'm not lying? Mrs. Felton's polite mask slipped for just a second. Watch your tone. He nodded and left. The next day they pulled him out of homeroom. The math department waited in the library, 4 teachers sitting at a table, notebooks open. They handed him a set of problems printed on official letterhead. Cameras rolled to maintain transparency. Take your time, Mrs. Felton said, hovering just close enough to make him uncomfortable. He sat at a small table in the center of the room. His pencil trembled slightly as he started. For the first few minutes, silence filled the air, only the sound of graphite scratching paper. Then came the rhythm he knew. The numbers aligned. The logic flowed. His breathing steadied. He didn't think about the teachers, or the cameras, or the doubt, just the math, the certainty of it. An hour later, he handed in the paper. The teachers huddled together, whispering. Zayden watched their expressions shift from skepticism to confusion to something else, uneasy recognition. Finally, one of them muttered, "This is correct, perfectly." Mrs. Felton crossed her arms. Maybe he memorized these too. One of the younger teachers frowned. Karen, come on. This isn't something you memorize. She looked at Zayden. We'll be reviewing this further. He left the room with his hands shaking. Not from fear, but from anger. That evening, his mother found him sitting on the edge of his bed, notebook open but untouched. What happened, baby? She asked. They don't believe me, he said flatly. They think I cheated. Mia sat beside him. Of course they do. You're a young black boy in a room full of people who never expected you to outthink them. You scared them. He stared at the floor. It's not supposed to be like this. Math doesn't lie. She smiled sadly. People do. Her words lingered in the air, heavy and sharp. Then she stood, her exhaustion replaced by a quiet fierceness. You don't let them make you question what you already know is true. If they won't see you, make them hear you. Show them again, and again, until they can't ignore you. Zayden nodded weakly. But the next morning, when he arrived at school, a notice had gone out. Birkwood Middle School's Math League results are under review pending verification. The email was signed by Mrs. Felton and Principal Carlyle. No mention of Zayden by name. That day, he sat alone at lunch again. Eva walked by his table with a smirk. Guess you're not a genius after all. He didn't respond. Later, he went to the library. The same quiet refuge. He flipped open a fresh notebook and began working through new theorems. Each stroke of his pencil was both protest and prayer. That night, as he lay awake, his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar notification. One new email. He opened it. From Dr. Alan Koenig, Chair, Mid-Atlantic Math League. Subject, confidential inquiry. His heart raced as he read. Zayden, I've reviewed your results personally. Your logic is impeccable. It's not just correct. It's innovative. I've also reviewed the footage of your in-school verification. What you did in that library test. No one could fake that. I believe you. And I think we need to talk about what comes next. Would you and your mother be open to a private meeting? Dr. Koenig. Zayden reread the message, disbelief softening into something fragile. Hope. For the first time in days, someone hadn't asked, where'd a kid like you learn that? They had said, I believe you. The Math League chair emails Zayden directly, offering something that might change everything. Late one afternoon, the sun dipping low in the sky, Zayden and his mother Mia sat in the back room of a nondescript cafe in Norfolk. The place was quiet, the hum of conversation muted. They waited while the door opened, and in walked a man Zayden recognized from pictures, Dr. Alan Koenig, the chair of the Mid-Atlantic Math League. He carried a slim leather portfolio under his arm, and his tie bore the faint insignia of the league. Dr. Koenig greeted them with a firm handshake, his gaze steady on Zayden. Thank you for meeting me here, he said, voice low and calm. I understand your school environment is complicated. Mia nodded, her eyes tired but determined. We appreciate you taking the time. Zayden has been through a lot. He opened his portfolio and stretched out a printed copy of Zayden's competition work proofs. Logic trees, step-by-step derivations. I've reviewed these in depth, Dr. Koenig said. What you did is not only correct, it's original. I compared your solution methods to archives of past winners and academic journals. There was nothing quite like it. Zayden looked down, his fingers playing with the edge of his sleeve. I just saw patterns. Dr. Koenig offered a small smile. And you created something new. That matters. But then his tone shifted. He leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. I'm going to be frank with you both. Staying at your current school may limit your opportunities, and not for academic reasons, for social ones. Gifted Black students often face hurdles that aren't about math ability. They're about environment, support, and yes, bias. Mia sat straighter. Are you saying the school will stop supporting him? In subtle ways, he said. His talent will be noticed. But being noticed isn't always enough. He might be isolated, scrutinized, doubted. I've seen it happen. You need a place where you're not just tolerated. You're championed. Zayden's heart pounded. The cafe's background music felt distant. He swallowed. What are you offering? Dr. Koenig closed the portfolio. I want to mentor you. No fees. I'll connect you with a private summer research group at the university level. I'll help you apply to a high school STEM program that's fully funded. Transportation, tuition, everything covered. He paused. But it means leaving this school. Immediately. Mia's eyes flickered. Leaving Birkwood? She pushed the word out like a question she wasn't ready for. Yes, Dr. Koenig said softly. And I know how that looks. But if you don't move now, the system might chew you up and spit you out. I don't want that for him. Zayden felt the room tilt. He thought of the teachers, the bulletin board, Mrs. Felton's smirk. He thought of the library nights, the competition victory, the accusation of cheating. This was a chance, but also a risk. Unexpectedly, Dr. Koenig leaned back and added, one more thing. The league is prepared to publicly announce your win once we clear up the investigation. If you join us, you'll be the first middle schooler from this region to receive a full research scholarship. That's rare. Mia looked at Zayden. His eyes were wide. He had never considered a full-on scholarship. He had just wanted respect. But, she began. There's no guarantee your current school will cooperate, Dr. Koenig said. In fact, they might fight it. Mia's voice shook. Fight it?
Yes, he said.
Sometimes institutions resist letting go of a gift they just discovered, especially when letting go means acknowledging their failure. Silence enveloped the table. Zayden's mind raced. To leave the only school he'd known for a few months. To step into the unknown. To become visible in a way he'd always feared. Finally, Mia nodded. We'll talk it over. Tonight. Dr. Koenig stood, extending his hand. Think about it. I'll be in touch soon. They walked outside into the dusky evening. The air was cooler than Norfolk nights usually were. Mia placed her hand on Zayden's shoulder. You did this. Don't lose faith in yourself. Zayden nodded but didn't speak. He thought of the classroom, the hallways, the bulletin board. They had tried to hide him, and now someone was offering to show him. The next morning, he returned to school trying to act like nothing had changed. But when he walked to his locker, just like any other day, his stomach dropped. Scratched into the side of the metal door were 2 letters and 1 symbol. KNR. He stepped back. A sinking feeling settled in his chest. Zayden returns to school and finds a slur scratched into his locker. The image of Zayden's vandalized locker, scratched with a racist slur, barely covered by a weak patch of paint, surfaced online before he even knew someone had taken a photo. It started with a tweet from a student at Birkwood. This is what happens when a black kid outshines everyone at my school. We see you, Zayden. Protect black brilliance. Attached was the photo. The word KNR still visible beneath the gray paint. Within an hour, the post had over 3,000 retweets. By lunch, local activists had picked it up. By evening, the Norfolk chapter of the NAACP had issued a statement condemning Birkwood Middle School's institutional indifference to racially targeted harassment. But Zayden didn't see any of this until he opened his phone the next morning. Dozens of notifications, DMs from strangers, classmates texting, "You're blowing up, man." Someone even tagged him in a TikTok that used a slideshow of protest signs over the sound of Nina Simone's Young, Gifted, and Black. and none of it made him feel seen. Just exposed. When he stepped onto school grounds that morning, he saw the news vans first, parked just outside the fence, satellite dishes pointed skyward, cameras on shoulders, microphones with plastic logos. He didn't want to be here. Inside the school, students whispered in pockets, some nodding at him, others just watching. The quiet kind of chaos before a storm. Then the first bell rang, and nobody moved. Instead, students began walking, quiet at first, a line forming down the main hall, out the side doors. Then chants began, soft but rising. Protect Black brilliance. We believe Zayden. We see you. It wasn't the whole school, but it didn't have to be. Nearly 50 students exited the building in coordinated lines. A few teachers tried to stop them but hesitated when they saw the camera. Zayden stood frozen near the lockers. He hadn't been told, hadn't been asked. He watched his classmates walk out holding cardboard signs and chanting slogans. His name scrawled across their shirts in black Sharpie. He didn't move. Not yet. Mrs. Felton passed him in the hallway, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Well, she muttered, just loud enough. This is what happens when things get emotional. Zayden turned toward her. What do you mean? She didn't answer directly. Just gave him a look, sharp, disapproving. You're letting this become a circus. Focus on your education instead of the drama. You think this is drama? He asked. I think it's overreaction, she said calmly. And quite frankly, you've been emotionally volatile. He stared at her, stunned into silence. That afternoon, Principal Carlisle gave a statement in front of the school. We are deeply committed to equity and student success. While we support the right to peaceful protest, we also ask our students to resolve concerns through appropriate channels. Zayden watched the clip online, his mouth tight. Appropriate channels. Like the Title VI complaint his mom filed. The ones that stalled in the district's inbox? His face was on local news before sunset. 13-year-old math whiz becomes symbol of racial injustice at elite middle school. Outcry grows over alleged sabotage and racism at Birkwood. The headline buzzed through every device in Norfolk, but none of the reporters asked him for comment. They quoted the tweet. The NAACP rep. The principal. Even Mrs. Felton, who described Zayden in her interview as intellectually promising but socially overwhelmed. Emotionally volatile, she repeated. Gifted students often struggle with maturity. Zayden shut off the TV. He sat in his room, lights off, staring at the ceiling. I didn't ask for any of this, he whispered. His mother walked in quietly, carrying a bowl of leftover spaghetti. I know, she said. He looked at her. They made me a symbol, but not a person. Mia sat beside him. Because they don't see the difference. You're brilliant, and black. That threatens people who want you to be either impressive or invisible. Not both. He sighed. They're not listening to me. They're just shouting about me. The next morning, the school held a sudden assembly. Mandatory. The gym packed full. Principal Carlisle stepped to the podium. We're reviewing all incidents with great care. This is a time for healing. For unity. Zayden sat in the back row. Mrs. Felton sat up front. He scanned the room. Faces tense. Eyes flicking toward him and then away. Afterward, students were dismissed early. The building emptied fast. Teachers looking relieved to escape. That evening, around 8:15 p.m., Nia was folding laundry when Zayden's phone pinged. An anonymous tip. No name. No number. Check your school account files. They changed something. Zayden's stomach flipped. He rushed to his laptop, fingers trembling as he logged into the student portal. He navigated to the Math League records folder, where team data, eligibility, and solution documents were stored. But something was wrong. Files were missing. Entire folders gone. Erased. Digital shadows of what had been weeks of proof, scanned worksheets, submission drafts, ranking results. All gone. Except one file remained. A Word doc titled Inconsistencies. He opened it. A formal accusation. Alleging he had used pre-written material from a summer tutoring program to complete his solution set. Attached was a time-stamped screenshot, one Zayden had never seen before. The document had already been signed by a committee member. It was dated that morning. He leaned back, his breath caught in his throat. Someone had broken into the system and planted a file while deleting the evidence that could clear him. He rushed to print the file before it could vanish too, then called for his mom. Nia appeared in seconds, her face shifting from concern to fury as she read. They're setting you up again, she said. her voice like stone. She picked up the phone. Already dialing. We're done with emails. We're showing up tomorrow with everything. Zayden stared at the blinking cursor in the now empty folder. The last shred of truth had just been overwritten. Someone breaks into the school's math contest records, and Zayden is blamed again. The morning after the protest, Zayden arrived at school to a frosted silence. The same hallways where chants had echoed just 2 days before now felt like a museum, everything intact but lifeless, as if the air itself had turned suspicious. His locker had been cleaned. The slur was gone, but the scratches remained faintly visible beneath the fresh gray paint. A cover-up, not a correction. Principal Carlisle's voice came over the intercom during first period. Zayden Miles, please report to the front office. He didn't move for a moment. Then he stood, collected his bag, and walked out under the still gaze of classmates who used to ignore him and now simply observed him like an exhibit. In the main office, a stack of files sat open. Assistant Principal Ramirez stood nearby, arms crossed, next to a woman Zayden didn't recognize. She had a clipboard and a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Zayden, Carlisle said, gesturing toward the conference room. Let's talk. The room smelled of lemon cleaner and paper. Carlisle sat at the head of the table, the woman beside him, and Zayden alone at the other end. We've been reviewing the events surrounding the math competition, Carlisle began, and we've encountered some inconsistencies. Inconsistencies, Zayden echoed. The woman with the clipboard interjected. Your competition forms. Specifically, your role on the team. It appears there was a clerical error. What kind of error? Ramirez pulled out a document and slid it across the table. Zayden read the header. Mid-Atlantic State Math League. Team submission form. But next to the line for team captain, his name had been scratched out and replaced with another, Max Lerner. That's not what it said before, Zayden said slowly. I filled that form out with Mr. Bradley. Carlisle nodded. We've spoken to Mr. Bradley. He says he doesn't recall the exact submission process. Zayden stared at the paper. Are you saying I wasn't the team lead? We're saying there's a discrepancy, the woman said, which complicates the award attribution. Zayden's heart pounded. What does that mean? Carlisle folded his hands. Until this is resolved, we've been advised to withhold recognition. Also, we've received complaints from faculty about your recent conduct, disruptions during class, refusal to cooperate in review sessions. Zayden's jaw dropped. I haven't disrupted anything. Carlisle nodded slowly. Regardless, we've decided to place you on temporary suspension. Academic and extracurricular. Zayden blinked. I'm suspended? For 1 week. But finals start next week. That's unfortunate timing, the woman said. But policy is policy. He sat there frozen. The numbers on the paper blurred. He couldn't even speak. When he got home, his mother was already on the phone, voice sharp, pacing the living room like a firestorm. No, you listen to me. She snapped into the phone. You think I'm gonna let this school railroad my son without a fight? No. You think I won't call the district board? The state? You think I haven't seen this playbook before? Zayden dropped his bag and sat at the edge of the couch. Nia ended the call and turned to him. They're trying to bury this, all of it. But I filed a formal complaint this morning. Title 6, Civil Rights Violation. He nodded. Will it work? She exhaled, the fire dimming into something more tired. It'll go into a pile of cases. Might get read, might get buried. But I'm not letting them do this without pushing back. Zayden looked away. They changed the forms, made it look like I didn't lead the team. I know, she said softly. I believe you. The next few days felt like slow suffocation. Zayden wasn't allowed on school grounds. His assignments were sent home in brown envelopes, with vague instructions. He emailed questions. Most went unanswered. One teacher replied with a single line. You should focus on conduct, not competition. It was like he'd been erased, but with official paperwork to prove it. Then came the email from Dr. Koenig. Subject, math seminar. Invitation, confirmed access. Zayden, we're hosting a graduate-level math seminar this weekend at Mason University. I'd like you to attend as my guest. No pressure to participate, just observe. But I believe you'll find the environment refreshing. Let me know if you're available. A. Koenig. Nia read the email over his shoulder. You're going, she said immediately. I'll drive you. 2 days later, Zayden stepped into a lecture hall, bigger than any room he'd ever seen. Sunlight spilled in through arched windows, Chalk dust floated like soft snow beneath warm conversation, and scribbled equations. College students in hoodies and glasses filled the rows, most of them several years older than him. He sat next to Dr. Koenig near the front. A visiting professor from MIT walked to the board and wrote a problem that made half the room groan. It was dense, the kind of theoretical problem designed to break patience, not just pencil lead. Consider the behavior of nested functions in nonlinear vector space convergence. Zayden's pen began moving. 15 minutes later, the room was still silent. Pencils tapped, heads scratched. Zayden raised his hand. Koenig looked over, startled. Zayden? He hesitated. I think I see a pattern in the structure. The professor blinked. You do? Zayden stood. The nested behavior, if you apply inversion logic and refactor the limits, you can reduce the complexity, like this. He walked to the front. His hand shook slightly, but the math didn't. He wrote quickly, lines of logic unfolding like language he'd known his whole life, but never spoken aloud. By the time he stepped back, the room was quiet. A grad student whispered, "Holy." The professor stared at the board, then turned to Koenig. "Who is this kid?" Dr. Koenig smiled. "That's what everyone's trying to figure out." Zayden sat back down, breathing hard but steady. It wasn't about trophies or forms anymore. It was about proof, and he had just delivered it. Dr. Koenig takes Zayden to a college-level math seminar, where Zayden solves a problem that's baffled grad students. Zayden didn't even know someone had recorded him at the seminar. Not Dr. Koenig, not the MIT professor, not the graduate students, who sat frozen as he worked the board with the kind of clarity and confidence most couldn't fake in their senior thesis defenses. But someone had filmed silently, respectfully, from the third row. The video was less than a minute long. No voiceover, no edits, just Zayden standing at the whiteboard in oversized sneakers and a hoodie too big for his frame, solving an equation with nothing but chalk and instinct. The camera zoomed in only once on the final line where he wrote the answer, underlined it twice and stepped back. It hit Twitter 2 days after the file scandal broke at Berkwood. No one at the school mentioned it. None of the administrators congratulated him. But the rest of the world noticed. By the end of the week, the clip had nearly 3.4 million views. It exploded after a single retweet from Dr. Rhea Stokes, a tenured black mathematician from Howard University, who rarely posted anything personal. Her caption read, "This child just solved a grad-level proof during a math seminar, while suspended from middle school. Stop underestimating our sons." Zayden Miles, Black Brilliance. The quote struck a nerve. Suddenly, Zayden wasn't just a name whispered in school hallways, or tagged in protest posters. He became a headline, a lightning rod, a mirror. Gifted black math prodigy silenced by suburban school politics. Suspended for being smart. Zayden Miles controversy, statistical outlier, or systemic victim. Emails poured in from across the country. Johns Hopkins, Stanford, Georgia Tech, UCLA, all inquiring about summer gifted programs, scholarships, early college entry. A few even offered housing stipends and mentorship tracks designed for students from challenging educational environments. Zayden sat in his room reading every message twice, sometimes 3 times, before responding. Each one felt like validation. And yet, none of them felt like justice. Because back in Berkwood, nothing changed. His suspension remained. His math league status was still under investigation. The digital file accusing him still circulated among faculty, and students passed by him without speaking. Some avoiding him, others just wary of proximity, as if brilliance was radioactive. Mrs. Felton hadn't said a word to him in 2 weeks. Not a greeting, not an apology, not even an acknowledgement that he existed. Until the interview. It aired on a local Sunday evening segment titled Inside the Scandal. Zayden wasn't watching. But Mia was. She dropped the laundry basket when she heard the words. The anchor leaned forward. "Mrs. Felton, you were Zayden Miles's math teacher when all of this began. What was your impression of him?" Mrs. Felton smiled, calm, professional. "Zayden was gifted, absolutely, but also misunderstood. I saw potential in him early on. That's why I gave him room to explore. That's why I recommended him to the math team." The anchor raised an eyebrow. "There are claims the school tried to suppress his accomplishments." Mrs. Felton's smile tightened. "Not at all. Zayden needed structure. What people don't understand is that brilliance without discipline can be self-destructive. I worked closely with him to channel that brilliance. Nia stared at the screen in disbelief. She paused the TV, rewound it, played it again. I worked closely with him to channel that brilliance. It was a lie so clean it almost sounded plausible. Nia stormed into Zayden's room, phone in hand. Did you see this? Zayden looked up. See what? She played the clip again. He blinked, his throat going dry. She said what? That she nurtured your talent. Nia hissed. That she guided you. That she saw something in you. After all the gaslighting, all the silence, she's taking credit. He didn't respond, just stared at the wall, numb. His silence was the only thing keeping his rage from boiling over. That night, Dr. Koenig called. He'd seen the interview too. I've already submitted a letter of correction to the station, he said, and a few statements to the press. But Zayden, people are going to twist this. You need to be ready. For what? Zayden asked. For the moment when they try to turn your story into a them story. Koenig paused. You're not a success because of Birkwood. You're a survivor in spite of it. Remember that. Zayden stared at his screen long after the call ended. He opened a new document and began writing. It wasn't an essay or a math solution, or an answer to a proof. It was a letter, open, honest, raw. He titled it, They Never Let Me Be a Kid. In it he described the laughter on his first day, the slur on his locker, the silence when he succeeded, and the investigation when he won. He described being called emotional and disruptive for simply reacting to racism. He detailed the erasure of his name from forms, the suspension that followed his highest achievement, and the people who tried to reframe his genius as inconvenience. He didn't mention Mrs. Felton by name. He didn't have to. He ended with a single line, If I'm a statistical outlier, it's because you kept trying to push me out of the graph. He posted it to Medium, then linked it on his Twitter and Instagram. Within 12 hours, it was trending. Teachers shared it, parents quoted it, students from other schools messaged him stories of being silenced, doubted, pushed to the side. A new hashtag emerged. Let Zayden speak. A week later he was invited to appear on a nationally syndicated morning show. Nia sat beside him in the green room, her hand on his knee. You ready? He took a breath. I think so. Then say everything you couldn't say in that school. And when the cameras rolled he did, calmly, clearly, unapologetically. He didn't perform. He explained. He told the world how easy it is to erase a black kid, without using a single slur. All it takes is silence, suspicion, and subtle sabotage. All it takes is disbelief. He told them math was his refuge, but people made it a battlefield. He told them his mother worked night shifts just to buy him notebooks they never saw. He told them about the janitor who filmed his first breakthrough, the professor who vouched for him, and the classmates who never once invited him into their group chat. He ended by saying, being brilliant isn't rare, being believed is. The host's eyes welled. The segment went viral again. But as Zayden stepped out of the studio and into the daylight, a producer jogged up beside him with a new update. You might want to see this, she said, handing him her phone. A headline flashed across the screen. Birkwood math teacher accused of falsifying records tied to student suspension. Mrs. Felton gives a public interview and claims she nurtured Zayden's talent. The air was thick with tension the morning after Zayden's television interview aired nationwide. His words had poured into homes across the country like sunlight through blinds, unfiltered, undeniable, and painful for anyone still trying to pretend they hadn't seen the truth. But what followed was something no one expected. Not even Zayden. An old classmate, Devin Lamont, who transferred out of Birkwood months ago, dug through his phone and posted a 26-second clip from a group project recording they'd done for Mrs. Felton's class. In the video, Mrs. Felton could be heard off camera saying, Zayden, sweetie, maybe try not to sound too smart. We don't want the others feeling bad. The tone was light, patronizing, sugar-laced sarcasm. A few kids laughed awkwardly. Zayden's voice mumbled something inaudible. The clip hit TikTok, then Instagram, then a stitched reaction video from a young black educator in Atlanta, who paused every few seconds to say, no, nope, this is not how you nurture brilliance. Soon another video surfaced, this time from a different student, showing Mrs. Felton during a staff meeting 3 years ago. She joked about how some of these scholarship kids only test well because they memorize fast, not because they actually get it. The comments flooded in. She laughed at him, and now she wants credit. This is why our kids lose faith in school systems. She sabotaged his name, then tried to ride his success. By the third video, Mrs. Felton's name was trending. Burkwood's website went down from traffic overload. Their Facebook page filled with one-star reviews. Parents from other districts began calling for the resignation of not just Mrs. Felton, but Principal Carlisle, the assistant superintendent, and anyone else who had let the case spiral into a national scandal. The school board convened an emergency meeting on a Friday night. Packed gym, cameras, parents with clipboards, and clip-on mics. A local pastor spoke. So did a civil rights attorney from the ACLU. Zayden and Nia didn't attend, but they watched from their living room. It was the first time Zayden had seen adults argue over his worth like it actually mattered. It made his stomach churn. Mrs. Felton sat near the front of the room, her shoulders tight, flanked by a lawyer. When the time came for her statement, she stood and unfolded a piece of paper with shaky hands. Her voice broke before her second sentence. "I never meant to harm any student," she said through tears. "Especially not Zayden. I misjudged. I mishandled. I misunderstood the weight of my words. But I am not a racist. I am a teacher who made mistakes under pressure." Some clapped. Some booed. Then her attorney stepped forward and delivered the twist no one saw coming. "We have filed a formal defamation lawsuit against certain individuals and media outlets for false characterization and reputational harm." Gasps spread like ripples. Zayden blinked at the TV. "She's suing?" he whispered. Nia stood up. "Of course she is. That's what they do when cornered. Cry then sue." The next few days blurred together. Reporters reached out for comment. Activists called. A podcast asked to feature Zayden's story. A documentary crew emailed a formal request to follow him through the rest of the academic year. But in the middle of it all, on a rainy Wednesday afternoon, a white envelope arrived in their mailbox. No return address, just a clean logo pressed into the paper, National Youth Mathematical Institute, NY. Inside, a letter printed on thick ivory stock. "Dear Zayden Miles, we followed your journey with admiration and deep respect. Your raw ability, resilience, and intellectual creativity have captured the attention of educators and mathematicians across the country. We would like to offer you a full academic residency at our institute, beginning this semester. You will be surrounded by other gifted youth from all over the world, with access to research mentors, advanced labs, and accelerated university coursework. Due to semester schedules and the competitive cohort calendar, your placement must begin within 7 days." Zayden reread the letter twice, then a third time. Then he sat perfectly still. His mother noticed immediately. "What is it?" He handed her the letter. Her eyes scanned the words. When she finished, she looked up at him. "This is it." He nodded, but didn't smile. "Why does it feel like it's happening too fast?" he said. "Because when people finally stop holding you back, your life starts moving at its real speed," she replied. But doubt crept in. "What about the lawsuit?" he asked. "The school still hasn't even cleared my record. What if they try to twist it? Say I ran away?" Nia shook her head. "You're not running. You're leveling up. And no one gets to rewrite your story but you." They stared at the letter again. Then Zayden's phone buzzed. An email. Subject: Immediate advisory. Legal response required. From Burkwood Middle Legal Counsel. Nia read it over his shoulder. "We are aware of your recent invitation to participate in NYMI, and respectfully ask that any public appearances be coordinated with school administration. We remind you that your student file remains under review." "They're trying to control the narrative," she growled. "I haven't even accepted yet," Zayden said, almost to himself. That night, as he sat in his room surrounded by half-packed bags and course materials from NYI, he clicked on a video he'd been avoiding. It was him. The first video. The janitor's TikTok. Just his hands, solving a problem under fluorescent light. He let it play again, and again, until the silence of the room made his heart beat louder than the audio. Then he opened a new document, typed exactly 3 words. "I accept, now." He hit send. At that exact moment his inbox pinged again. Another message. From a name he didn't recognize. No subject line. Just a file attachment. "Fine file. Felton audio." He clicked it. A voice. Crackly. Secretly recorded. "Mrs. Felton. I don't care how smart he is. That kid needed to be reminded who's really in charge. I wasn't going to let some street-taught black boy embarrass me in my own classroom." Zayden froze. His hands clenched. Because now, finally, he had more than proof. He had power. Zayden receives an invite from a National Youth Math Institute, but he must leave immediately. The sun hadn't risen yet, but Zayden was already awake. The NY letter sat on his desk, crisp and flat, beside a stack of textbooks and an unopened suitcase. The room was clean, too clean, like a scene waiting to be left behind. He sat cross-legged on the edge of his bed, laptop glowing in the soft dark. The audio file still echoed in his mind. Mrs. Felton's voice, acidic and undeniable, some street-taught black boy. That sentence had shattered something and stitched something else in its place. All this time, he thought her silence was indifference. He didn't know it was contempt. His mom had printed the audio file, filed it, sent it. The district superintendent confirmed receipt within 2 hours. An official review was now expedited. But no one said reinstatement. No one said justice. Just re-review. Zayden clicked open his school portal again. A banner appeared at the top. Due to new evidence, Brookwood administration is re-evaluating records tied to the 2025 Math League competition. Then a second notice. Pending reinstatement of suspended student. It should have felt like a win, but it didn't, because every word felt like a quiet negotiation. Not a correction, not an apology, just damage control. When Nia came into the room, she didn't ask if he saw it. She held her coffee and leaned against the doorway. "You're leaving," she said, as if stating the weather. Zayden looked up. "I haven't decided." She sipped. "You have. You're just scared of what it'll mean." He turned back to the screen. "I'm not trying to abandon anyone." "You're not abandoning. You're advancing." He didn't respond. "You fought already," she added. "You stayed. You told the truth. You tried to fix it from the inside. And it cost you," she said. "So now it's time to stop proving your pain and start protecting your power." Zayden nodded slowly, then closed the laptop. But as the light vanished from the screen, something new sparked inside him. He walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer, and pulled out a pen. "Mom," he said, "I want to write something. To the school. To the students. Everyone. Before I leave." She nodded. "Then write." For the next 3 hours, he did. Each word bled out slow and sharp. Not as revenge, not even for clarity, but because he wanted the truth to outlive the moment. He wanted every student, every teacher, every administrator who said nothing to remember the silence they chose. The letter was titled simply, "I was never meant to stay silent." He started with what they remembered. His first day, the laughter, the teacher's smirk, then the erased name, the locker vandalism, the investigations, the sudden rewriting of leadership roles, the public shaming, disguised as protocol. He wrote, "You watched me win and called it suspicious. You watched me suffer and called it complicated. You watched me prove myself again and again and then punished me for daring to be undeniable." He didn't use anger as a weapon. He used truth as a mirror. He ended the letter with one question. "If I didn't speak, would any of you have?" He posted it to the school forum, then Instagram, then Twitter. The caption read, "Leaving soon. But I needed to say this first." It was 8:12 a.m. By 9 it had already been shared 4,000 times. By noon it was on BuzzFeed, Teen Vogue, and Black Excellence Weekly. By 1:30 his school login was mysteriously disabled. He tried to check his portal locked out. Zayden didn't tell his mother immediately. He didn't want her fighting battles he no longer cared to win. But the world outside Brookwood had already started fighting for him. At 3:17 p.m. his inbox pinged. Subject, leave interview request. National Evening Network. From Alexis Fairmont. Anchor. The National Table. Zayden's eyes widened. He clicked. "Zayden, I read your letter this morning and immediately scrapped the segment we had planned tonight. I would like to interview you live, one-on-one. National broadcast. You've started a national conversation. Let's make sure your voice stays at the center of it. Are you free tomorrow evening?" He didn't answer right away. He sat back, stunned. Naya walked into the room again. "You okay?" He turned the screen toward her. She read it once. Then again, then she smiled. "Looks like the world's finally catching up to you." Zayden exhaled. It wasn't validation he felt. It was readiness. Still, part of him lingered. The part tied to a hallway where he once waited to be called smart without skepticism. The part that wanted just one teacher to say, "I'm sorry," and mean it. But that part was fading now. He looked out the window. The sky was overcast. A thin drizzle blurred the edges of the world. And yet, he could see further than he ever had. Zayden's letter reaches a national news anchor, who wants to interview him live. The green room was colder than Zayden expected. He sat on the edge of a stiff gray couch, palms flat against his knees, the edges of his blazer freshly pressed but already feeling too tight around the collar. Across from him, a bowl of untouched fruit sat on a glass table beside 2 bottles of sparkling water. Nia paced slowly, arms folded, whispering to herself. Outside, the cameras were being positioned, lights adjusted. The countdown to a live national broadcast ticked away quietly, but the tension in the room was deafening. Zayden wasn't scared of talking. Not anymore. He had done that already. Online, in writing, in rooms where people whispered instead of clapped. He wasn't even nervous about the millions watching. He was afraid of what it would cost to finally be visible. Zay, Nia said softly, pausing in front of him. You don't owe anyone a perfect performance. He looked up. I just want to tell the truth. Then tell it the way it happened. Not the way they want to hear it. A knock came at the door. A production assistant poked her head in. 5 minutes. We're ready for you, Zayden. He nodded. The studio was a contrast of chaos and calm. Technicians whispered into headsets. A makeup artist dabbed his forehead one last time. Behind the desk sat Alexis Fairmont, the evening anchor whose face had become a fixture in homes across America for over a decade. She was calm, poised, and striking in a navy blue blazer. As he walked onto the stage, Zayden spotted the red tally light above the main camera flashing live. The music intro faded. Alexis turned to face the camera. Tonight, she began, we bring you a conversation that has sparked a national reckoning about education, equity, and the quiet ways we silence brilliance before it has the chance to shine. She turned to Zayden. Please welcome 13-year-old Zayden Miles. The applause was soft, respectful. Zayden nodded. The interview began simply. A recap of events. A few clips shown. His viral whiteboard moment. Snippets from the protest. A segment from Mrs. Felton's interview. Alexis walked him through it gently, allowing space for reflection. But then came the moment that mattered most. Alexis leaned in slightly. Zayden, she said, when did you first realize they didn't see your talent, only your threat? Zayden didn't answer right away. He looked past the camera lights, into the black space where the audience was invisible but present. Then he said, when I solved something they didn't expect me to understand, and instead of saying, how did you do that, they said, who helped you cheat? Alexis nodded, prompting him with her silence. Zayden continued. They never saw me when I was trying to fit in. When I was raising my hand. When I was finishing problems early. They didn't see me until my answer made them look unprepared. Until my success could be used to prove something bigger than me. Alexis let the words hang. And that's what hurt most, he added quietly. Not that they doubted me, but that they only believed me when strangers online said I mattered. She finally spoke. You're saying they didn't see you until you became useful. Zayden nodded. Exactly. A beat. Passed. Then Alexis asked, is there anyone you want to thank? Zayden smiled, and for the first time in the interview, it was soft. My mom. For never letting me think less of myself, even when I didn't know how to believe in me. Mr. Howard, the janitor who filmed my first proof without asking for anything in return. Dr. Koenig for showing me that math doesn't belong to anyone. It's a language, and I'm fluent. Alexis gave a light chuckle. And your school? Zayden's expression didn't change. No, he said. Not them. The room fell silent. They had every chance, he added. But instead of protecting me, they protected their reputation. Even when I was right. Alexis turned back to the camera. Zayden Miles, everyone. The screen faded to commercial. In the silence before the lights dimmed, Alexis reached over and squeezed his hand. No words, just understanding. The segment aired on both coasts. Clips were instantly clipped, posted, shared, stitched. Teachers debated it in classrooms. Students played it on projectors. Parents argued about it on Facebook. One conservative commentator tweeted, maybe we should stop handing kids microphones before they're old enough to vote. To which someone replied with the clip of Zayden's quote, they didn't believe me. They believed the backlash. The next morning, Let's Zayden Lead trended nationwide. By 11:14 a.m., the clip had 2.8 million views. By 12:42, a U.S. senator from Georgia posted the interview to her timeline. Her caption was brief, powerful. We're drafting a STEM equity bill in honor of Zayden Miles. It's time to build classrooms that don't require proof of trauma to unlock opportunity. Zayden Bill, let Zayden lead. Zayden saw the tweet during lunch. He dropped his spoon. Nia looked up from across the kitchen. What happened now? He showed her. She covered her mouth. Is this real? He clicked on the senator's profile. Verified. Thousands of retweets. Celebrities chiming in. Professors tagging their universities. Students sharing their own stories. A new wave of momentum had begun. But just as he turned off the screen, his phone buzzed again. It was a text. Unknown number. Check your voicemail. Urgent. He frowned. Dialed in. One message. A male voice. Shaky, regretful, unmistakably familiar. Zayden, this is Mr. Bradley. I was your math team coach. I need to speak with you. There's something I have to admit. About the competition forms. About who really edited them. I should have said something sooner. But I was afraid. And now, well, everything's changing. Call me when you can, please. Zayden pulled the phone from his ear. Another voice. Another crack in the facade. A senator tweets the clip and offers him a STEM scholarship bill in his name. The sky above California looked nothing like Norfolk. It was wider, brighter, and at 6:40 a.m., already buzzing with momentum. On the campus of the Nova STEM Academy, rows of buildings gleamed in soft silver and glass, humming with the energy of minds that never stopped stretching. Zayden Miles walked through the courtyard with a black backpack slung over one shoulder and a half-eaten protein bar in his hand. He wore the same beat-up sneakers he'd worn on his first day at Berkwood, but now no one saw them as a mark of poverty. They were part of his story, his armor, his proof. Zay, a voice called behind him. He turned to see Tessa, a fellow freshman from Seattle, waving as she jogged toward him, clutching a graphing tablet. You still coming to the quantum problem set lab? Zayden nodded. Yeah, just dropped my notebook in the lounge. You're always early, she grinned, then lowered her voice. I saw your interview again. They replayed it last night on PBS. My uncle cried. Zayden chuckled, brushing it off. Yeah, I get that a lot now. But he still hadn't gotten used to the looks, or the whispers. Not the cruel kind, but the odd kind. Like people were meeting a myth they didn't expect to be real. At Nova, brilliance wasn't rare, but his kind of journey was. He had mentors now, professors who actually listened, lab directors who didn't question if he belonged. He was designing equations with upperclassmen, creating software to detect pattern collapses in long-form math problems, and auditing a graduate course on mathematical intuition. It was everything he dreamed, everything he deserved. And yet, Norfolk never left him. Every Saturday, Zayden zoomed into a community library room, where a group of black and brown middle schoolers gathered with tattered notebooks in silent determination. He tutored them for free. Called it the Saturday set, because we all have variables, he'd told them once. But if you know how to solve the system, nothing's unsolvable. His story had become part of local lore. Berkwood, meanwhile, had quietly rewritten its narrative. Mrs. Felton resigned 1 week before the district's public apology letter was released. The school board didn't fire her. They allowed her to step aside. Her defamation case was dropped without ceremony. No payout, no statements, just an administrative vanishing. Principal Carlisle was reassigned to another district under the vague title of Equity Advisor. Nia smirked when she read the press release. That's the same system promoting itself after failing a child, she'd said. In response to public pressure, the district launched a new equity training initiative, mandatory for all staff. It included modules titled Recognizing Internal Bias, the Cost of Cultural Silence, and Supporting Black Giftedness in Predominantly White Institutions. Zayden never got an apology from Mrs. Felton, but he did receive a letter from Mr. Bradley, the math team coach who finally confessed to altering the submission forms. In it, Bradley admitted, I was afraid the school would retaliate against me if I told the truth. I thought staying silent would protect my job, but I realize now that protecting my job meant betraying a student who trusted me. I'm sorry. Zayden didn't reply. He didn't need to. The world had already replied for him. A new article in Scientific American profiled Zayden as a case study in resilience, titled, The Kid Who Rewrote the Equation and the Rules. He was interviewed by college deans, met with senators, and consulted by engineers who wanted his input on pattern compression algorithms. But through it all, he remained grounded. He still called his mother every night, Still wore his brother Tariq's old hoodie when he studied late. Still read his own notebooks from middle school, just to remember where the spark started. One Thursday afternoon, while working through an abstract proof in the academy's main study hall, the receptionist called his name over the intercom. Zayden Miles, you have a delivery. Please come to the front desk. He stood slowly, eyes narrowing. He wasn't expecting anything. At the front desk, a large white envelope sat waiting. No return address, just a raised seal.
The White House.
He stared at it. For a full 10 seconds he didn't move. Then he picked it up. His hands trembled slightly as he slid a finger beneath the flap and pulled out the letter inside. It was handwritten on thick ivory paper with an embossed crest at the top. Dear Zayden, I watched your interview, and I watched the country listen to you. I want you to know your voice is not just heard, it's valued. We're inviting you to join a national youth advisory panel on education reform. You'll help design a new federal initiative focused on gifted equity and bias accountability. Your story has already shaped public conversation. Now we want your help, shaping policy. If you're willing, we'd like to meet you in person. Soon. Office of the President of the United States. Zayden's knees nearly buckled. He blinked, reread it, then leaned against the wall. His whole life had once been compressed into silent pages and dismissed notebooks. Now the highest office in the land wanted his insight. He reached for his phone, dialed the only number that still made his hands shake a little when it rang. Mom, he said. Nia's voice came fast. Zay, you okay? I just got an envelope. Her voice sharpened. From who? He paused, smiling slowly. From the White House. Silence. Then, what? Boy, stop playing with me. I'm serious. They want to meet. They want me to help design a national program. Education reform. More silence. Then tears. Then laughter that turned into a sharp, joyful sob. You're going, she said. Even if I gotta fly out there and drag you in a suit. Zayden leaned back, looking out the academy windows. The sky had changed again, just like his story. But this time, he was no longer walking into someone else's system. He was helping write the next one. Zayden receives an envelope at his dorm, from the White House. The stage was bigger than anything Zayden had stood on before. It wasn't just the size, it was the weight of the lights, the cameras, the audience dressed in tailored suits and sharp gowns, seated in rows that shimmered with anticipation. The ballroom at the National Center for Educational Innovation in Washington, D.C., that hosted presidents, policy reformers, Nobel laureates. Tonight it would host a 13-year-old black boy from Norfolk.
Zayden Miles.
The official title of the event was long. The 54th Annual Future of Learning Summit and National Honors Gala. But the moment everyone was there for had already been distilled in the media buzz surrounding it. Zayden's night. He stood backstage, adjusting the collar of his dark navy suit, one he and his mother picked out together on a rushed video call, just a week earlier. She couldn't be there tonight. Tariq was coming home from prison that morning, and she had made a promise to welcome him at the gates. But Zayden didn't feel alone. He had the folded letter from the White House in his inside pocket. He had a new family in Dr. Koenig, in Tessa, in the Saturday set students who now called themselves Zayden's Variables. And above all, he had his truth. As the MC stepped to the mic and began his introduction, the room hushed. We honor a young man whose brilliance forced an entire system to look inward. A young man who reminded us that giftedness doesn't need polish to be real. That genius doesn't always wear a blazer on day one. Applause rose. Zayden inhaled. And now, the MC said, please welcome this year's Youth Leadership in Education honoree, Zayden Miles. He walked into the spotlight. The first thing he noticed was the silence between the claps. Not awkward, not impatient, just weighty. Like everyone had decided to hold their breath together. He reached the podium, looked out over the sea of expectant eyes, and he spoke. When I was 10, he began, I figured out how to divide irrational roots before I knew how to tie a tie. I knew proofs before I knew politics. I knew equations, but I didn't know that being good at something wasn't always enough. A few people nodded. I walked into a school that told me it was advanced, he continued. But what they didn't tell me was that their definition of advanced had less to do with ability and more to do with who they expected to succeed. Now, the room shifted, not in discomfort, but in realization. I was told I didn't belong, laughed at when I volunteered, erased when I proved myself, investigated when I won. A beat passed. But I kept solving, he said, not to prove them wrong, but because no one should get to measure my worth based on where I'm from, what I wear, or what I look like when I get the right answer. More nods, louder this time. He looked out over the audience, scanning for a face that wasn't there. My mom is watching this from home, he said, his voice softening. She worked night shifts just so I could have notebooks that nobody ever graded. She told me I was brilliant when the world told me I was a disruption. A pause. So tonight, this honor, it's not just mine, it's for every black student who was told to wait their turn. Every kid who had to teach themselves in silence. Every genius whose only mistake was not asking for permission to be excellent. Applause rose again. And then he delivered the line that would replay on every news channel that night. Stitched into TikToks, quoted in classrooms, turned into a hashtag, etched onto posters. Black kids don't need saviors. We need space. We need space to be loud without being labeled aggressive. To be quiet without being dismissed. To be excellent without having to explain why. He let the words settle, then added, and we need investment. Not just in testing, in teaching. Not just in access, in expectation. The room was still. But most of all, he said, we need the world to stop acting surprised when we win. Because we've been winning. You just haven't been watching. Standing ovation. He took a breath, collected himself, and to every young black boy or girl watching this right now, who loves numbers or poems or stars or code, remember this, your mind is not a gift for others to validate. It is a tool for you to build the world you want. His eyes welled slightly, but he didn't wipe them. Let them see. He closed his speech with just 5 words. Thank you for seeing me. And stepped back from the podium. Flashes exploded from every direction. The stage filled with applause, real and rising. No condescension, no pity, just respect. As Zayden walked down the steps, a line of students in matching blue sashes reached out to shake his hand. One young girl with braids looked up at him, with wide shining eyes. I want to do math like you, she whispered. He bent slightly. You already can. She smiled like it was the only permission she needed. Outside the gala, the night was cool, breezy. His driver waited beside a black town car, but Zayden didn't get in yet. He pulled out his phone. A text had come in. Tariq. Mom showed me the clip. You a real problem now, Zay. I'm proud of you. Zayden grinned, then opened a blank text to Naya. Zayden. He smiled when he said it. She replied instantly. Mia, then it's full circle, baby. He looked up at the stars. For the first time, he wasn't trying to find his place in the world. He was designing the formula for what came next. Zayden. Honored, respected, and finally seen. No cliffhanger, just triumph. No child should have to fight this hard, just to be seen. If Zayden's story made you feel something, if you've ever been underestimated, erased or silenced, then don't scroll past this. Type yes. If you believe brilliance should never be judged by skin color. Subscribe if this broke your heart.